welcome in to week 3, the edition. You guys have grown to love it. It is the Keon Sports High School Preview Podcast, Webcast Show, basically. I am Vince McKee. Alongside me, Cole McDaniel with his Christmas tree up. I just caught that. Also, Dom Cleary. We call him the Italian Stallion. Guys, listening, watching at home, welcome to the show. Dom and Cole, welcome in.
Wait, you're not the Italian Stallion, Vince?
No, I've never been, but I do support Rocky. So I had to throw it on this week.
I was wearing a Rocky shirt yesterday. So it's funny enough that we were texting about it as a group, and now you've got a Rocky shirt on today. It's fitting. Maybe tomorrow Dom will wear a Rocky shirt 3 days in a row. Somebody wears one of those. So
I'll throw on my Rocky shirt and put on my Phillies hat while I'm at it.
Yeah, perfect.
And this is not by accident. This is a subtle hint at what we have coming up in the lightning round. And guys, let me just tell you, when I wrote down the questions for the lightning round that we're going to get to later in the show, I couldn't stop laughing. So either I have a sick sense of humor where I think they're hysterical, or they're actually pretty funny. We're going to find out later in the show. But listen, this past weekend, this was the kind of weekend why I love high school football. The reason why Keon Sports was built. You had games like the one Cole was at that a lot of people thought was going to be a blowout. One hell of a game. Medina pulls it out in the end over Wadsworth. You have games like Ignatius versus Cleveland Heights, which to me was one of the greatest games in OHSA playoff history. Chuck Kyle, emotional as can be afterwards, phenomenal comeback. We're going to talk about all of that. But before we do, we're going to start with Cole. And Cole, if you could just fill us in, what happened with Medina and Wadsworth? Because it's almost like Wadsworth took your face, printed it off, and put it on a billboard, and then went and played football Friday night.
Well, let me get started with this. You saw the Christmas tree behind me. Got that up here now. November is like the Christmas of sports season, of really the whole sports landscape of the entire year for me. Some people say March, around March Madness, is their favorite. Some people say that like September, the start of football, that season's their favorite. You hear about April because of the Masters as well, crossing over with everything. November is my favorite because you have high school football playoffs, college football, NFL football, the start of college basketball. I mean, we're talking about Division I basketball. There's been over 100 games on TV today, it feels like, with all levels. So there's a lot going on. It's fun. And this year, oddly enough, now I hate that the World Cup is this month, but I mean, it adds to something interesting. It's something different this year. So the World Cup, those rosters starting to get announced. It has been fantastic. So let me get to this. We get deeper into the playoffs and things get continually more and more interesting. Last week, compared to the week before, there were a lot better games. We had talked about with the playoffs expanding. We saw some big blowouts in the first week. Last week was interesting. My game, the Medina Wadsworth game, talked about I had picked against Wadsworth their week before. And then you mentioned it. That's 2 weeks in a row I ended up picking against them. Now, my game was certainly interesting because Wadsworth not only came to play, but all I heard, because I was on the away side this game, all I heard was complaining, groans, shouting from the Wadsworth side, unhappy with the officials.
That's what I heard.
Very unhappy with the officials.
Yeah, a fellow reporter also reported that. Yes.
Yeah, and let me put it this way. Were there a couple missed calls? Yes. There are in every single football game. But in a close game, when you're desperate to win, things seem more obvious to you, where as a neutral reporter there, honestly, don't really care who wins either way. I'm just looking for a good game to write about, a good game to cover. And it was. The thing is, like a low throw that Stoddard short arms, and Jack Wojak dives in the corner of the end zone. He barely gets his fingertips underneath of it. You see that ball bounce up a little bit because it hit the tips of his fingers right on top of that ground. And when it hit his fingers, he popped it right up into his chest and he caught it. Wonderful play. On the replay, I have it on video. Some other people I was around had it on video. We zoomed in. We watched it back. He barely got his fingers under that football. He caught that ball. But because when it hit his fingertips and it bounced up, everybody on the Wadsworth side was convinced that it hit the ground. Somebody who was a Wadsworth supporter, out there in the box, let's just put it this way, close enough to be shown that replay, they watched the replay and still thought it hit the ground watching that replay. So when you're a fan of a team, it's a close game. You need to win. You're going to see what you want to see. You're going to believe what you want to believe. I don't think the officiating was nearly as bad, but hey, Wadsworth definitely gave Medina a test. They kept it close, but they did the same thing earlier in the year. It wasn't that far off. I believe it was like 45-35 the last two times those teams had played non-conference matchup earlier in the season. So it was a fun one. It was good to watch that close matchup, but definitely hostile with thinking the officials were worse than probably what it actually was.
And Wadsworth goes to the playoffs every year, usually gets to the second or third round. I covered them 2 years in a row, back-to-back years in the playoffs where Avon Lake actually knocked them off 19 and 20. And both those Wadsworth teams were very, very good. Cole McDaniel, we're actually going to stay with you right now. I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to see this weekend. And Dom, clearly, I want you to chime in as well, because both you guys were there. It's a game I have referenced at least 4 or 5 times on this podcast. And I know we have talked about to death on the side. Darian Jackson has gone on the record as saying it was the best game of the year. It is Mentor versus Medina round 2. And I'm going to throw this out there for the fans out there too. I've been around this rivalry for a long time. Mentor controlled this rivalry for many years. It was a mental block over Medina. And we're going back to Drew Ellar's junior year, where Mentor beat them twice. Mentor knocked them out of the playoffs in 2020. Recently, Medina's been able to break that mental block, whatever was going on, and get past Mentor. They did it last year. They've done it once this year. Can they do it twice in a single season? I do not think that Mentor is nearly as good as they've been the last couple of years. I think they've taken a little bit of a step back. I love Scotty Fox, love Jacob Snow, love Garrett Waite, love that team. But I don't think they're nearly the team that was beating Drew Eller 2 years ago. Cole, Dom, preview Friday night, the big one.
Well, you're right. Medina last year was their first win against Mentor. And then they won this year already. And they're looking to play again. I think that Wadsworth's success against Medina has to do with, I think Wadsworth has some physicality just in the way they play. So they were able to match Medina. Medina is not the most physical team out there. We already know that. Now they've gotten more physical. They've added some packages in there. But truly, Wadsworth played a little bit more physical of a brand of football. I believe that. They also, we're finding a way to there are a couple players that they'd be able to get the ball to, and they're pretty much doing all the work there. I think when we come into this Mentor game and we take a look at this, can Mentor beat Medina? Yes. Will they? No. They won't. I don't believe it. I'd be shocked if they do. They have some great players. You mentioned them. Scotty Fox is a young quarterback. He's a sophomore. I'm excited to see what he does his junior year, his senior year, but we're not there yet. We're still here in the sophomore year. He's making some good plays, but he also makes some mistakes, what you expect from a young player.
Yep.
You have Jacob Snow. Meanwhile, I also, over there, I have the Saints-Ravens game currently going on at the moment. Jacob Snow is the high school Taysom Hill. He's a gadget guy. He can be taking those direct snaps. He can play some quarterback. You see him out. He could honestly be then the slot receiver. You see him on the defense making an impact. I compare him to the Taysom Hill of high school football. He can do a lot. You have a bunch of other receivers that make impact plays. Waite's a decent running back. They have plenty of potential. The other thing is Brennan Vernon, very talented defensive end who's going to be playing Division I football. Every time I've seen him in person, he's been pretty quiet. Medina, other places have been finding a way to get that ball away from him, also double team him, and he has not been destroying those blockers, something you'd expect out of a very talented prospect.
Strongsville, I saw too. You covered that Strongsville game, correct? First minor? I think Brunswick. I'm sorry, my fault.
Yeah.
Brunswick.
Yeah, and he was pretty quiet. Minter's got to find a way to unleash him defensively and wreak some havoc in the backfield as well to pressure Stoddard. I think that's going to be key. They have good players. I just talked about it. But I've questioned some of the play calling. I've questioned the intensity. They're not at the level they were a couple years ago. I mean, Vince, we saw McKinley last season, okay? And that's who they went up against this past week. McKinley played against Eds last year, and I know it was the Eds team that won state championship.
Still, yeah, smashed.
But they got hammered, and they had plenty of young talent on that team. So it's a lot of the same faces that we saw last season, and it was a close battle. I just don't think Minter's quite at that level that even if they got by Medina, that they could compete with a team like Eds. But of course, they have to focus at what's ahead of them. Medina's going to be a tough test, and I don't think they can put up enough points to beat them in a shootout.
So before I go to Dom on this, I want to mention this because we do a lot of comparisons, right? Mm-hmm. And you think about, okay, this team beat this team, lost to this team. What about if these two teams play? I'll say it like this, and this is coming from the biggest St. Ignatius football fan you're going to find. Full disclosure, there's a St. Ignatius helmet 3 feet from me, right? I'll admit it. It's all. I love St. Ed's too, so I'm on both sides of the coin. But regardless, so St. Ignatius this year, it's the worst St. Ignatius team of my lifetime. Their stats, everything, their point differential, it's not good. Okay, and St. Ignatius was up big on Menor. Menor was able to come back. St. Ignatius still won week 2 of the season at First Energy Stadium, triple overtime game, one of the best games I've ever seen. It's been a season of miracles for Chuck Kyle. I'll say it. He would, in an honest moment, Chico would probably admit it. It's been a season of miracles. But that Mentor team did not impress me that night. I've gone back, like I always do, watched both games that you guys broadcasted. Neither time was I too blown away. Like I said, to me, I think Scotty Fox gets better as the games go on. And I also think by the time Scotty Fox is a senior, he might be the best quarterback in the state. Watch out for that kid. Dom, two-pronged question for you here. You saw the first one. Excited for the rematch. Who's going to win and why? Medina versus Menor. Then we're going to talk a little Olmsted Falls Avon right after that.
Yeah, but about that Menor Medina matchup, I'm really excited for that one. I was hoping that they would face off. Funny enough, I was at Faith's work. She works at a bar in Erie, and I found that game on the TV, and I had the entire bar cheering for Menor as they were coming back with a minute left, and I thought that was a cool little experience. And I was glad that Menor was able to have a win like that, because I don't know if you guys saw it. Boy, was it an incredible victory at the very end. I mean, wow. But you know what? We saw a Menor team that early in the game had everything that they needed to win that game. Things kind of slipped away. And I actually disagree with you. I think Scotty Fox kind of struggles as we get later in the games. Maybe in the game you saw, he got better. Game that we saw, he got worse and worse. Right. Now, the talent was still there. He was making decisions. He was kind of, feet were jumping a little bit, a little too excited from time to time, maybe a little nervous. He wasn't the same comfortable and confident quarterback that we know from him early in the year when he faced Medina. It was a little hard in that third and fourth quarter for him. I don't think that's the case. I think this team jumps up early and they barely hold on a lead. I think that Medina has the better team when you look at experience, when you look at ready to win now, but I think Menor can shock them. I feel like this is a team that has owned this rivalry, and this kids know this. They've been on a team that has owned this rivalry. They know what that's like, right? I mean, if these kids played 3-4 years ago, they know that. They want to get back to that. They know that this is their opportunity to change things back to the way it should be. I've been on the opposite side of a rivalry the way that Medina's been and flipped it. And I'll tell you what, that team that's usually on top, they find a way to show you, hey, we're still the big brother. Your little brother, the situation got us a few times, but we're still big brother. I think that Menor, they'll prove that this weekend.
There we go. Some bulletin board material. You heard it first. Dahmer picking Mentor. I absolutely love it. I guess I'll be the tiebreaker here. Heart says Medina just because I know a lot of the parents, friends with them. Again, full disclosure, I don't care. Head actually says Mentor. I don't know what it is, but I think there is that mental block. Although, if anybody knows Vincenzo, Peter, James, Luca McKee, you know I'm going with my heart over my head 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
That 10th time when I go with my head's usually because I agree with Cole. But I'm going to go with my heart this time, and I'm going to stick with Medina. So we got 2 Medinas, 1 Mentor. And again, I only say Mentor with my head sometimes strictly because they've owned that rivalry for so many years. But as Dom just said, sometimes all it takes is 1 win to flip everything. Yeah. And then you pick against them.
And you know, I was in a rivalry where, I mean, I think at one point before my school kind of went on like their 6-year good streak, that they were like 60 to like 20 in our own in a rivalry that we were in, some absurd like that. And then for about 6 years we dominated them. We still won our district and went to state title runs, but we would lose to them at least once a year before the playoffs. And I feel like sometimes teams, they know that they're supposed to be big brother. I just feel like that's the case. They have a chance to prove that in the playoffs. I'm taking the team that's owned this rivalry the past so many years.
This is one of these nights where I wish I could be in 4 or 5 different places at once, quite frankly. If you don't believe that my heart and my head and everything in me is going to be in Euclid on Friday night while I sit in a press box in Brunswick and cover Holy Name, I can't begin to tell you, but wanted to get that love out there for Tyler Baca, and Enos Hines. They deserve that moment. They deserve to have that game covered. Those guys have earned it. I will be, like I said, in Brunswick, Holy Name versus Mansfield Senior. Tom, we're going to stay with you, though. Another rivalry that is near and dear to my heart, and it's crazy because we call it a rivalry when Avon has won almost 15 straight times, which is insanity to me. Love both coaches, love both programs, love both cities. I can't say enough good things about Avon and Olmsted Falls. They've been nothing but great to me. But, although the parking lot's a different story, and we're going to let Cole cover that a little bit later. Tom, who's going to win and why can Olmsted Falls break the jinx?
Do you know what school they played at last year in the playoffs?
Avon in the playoffs.
In the playoffs?
No. Playoffs was a neutral site. So by the time they reached the playoffs,
do you know where it was?
I do not remember.
Okay.
I think it would have been Strongsville, ironically.
Okay. I remember I followed Olmsted Falls. I was not at that game. I followed Olmsted Falls, but it was senior night at Baldwin Wallace. And on Fridays we have a senior fire where we throw things into the fire. It's a big thing. But
so you've never seen Olmsted Falls?
I've never seen them play.
You've never seen them lose Olmsted Falls.
There
you go.
Yeah, they're undefeated for me. Maybe I'm their good luck. This is hard for me. This is hard for me, right? Because Avon is a fun team. I have not seen them play this year, Avon. So I'm excited. Good. And here's the thing, though, right? Because usually I always like the gritty run the ball team, but Avon can kind of do it all, right? I mean, because they could run the ball and put 300 yards on your head and just say, "Boom, we're taking away with it." If Olmsted Falls wants to win this, here are the keys, right? Keep the ball out of McAfee's hands, and that's sorry. I hope I said his name right. It's been a while since I really got to talk about him.
It's okay, Jagorian
Cathy, yeah. And you need to keep the ball out of his hands. I mean, he might be one of the best high school running backs that I have ever seen, ever since I've been around high school football. Like ever since I've watched it, even when I was 8 and I was watching it, he might be the best guy I've ever seen. And Rocco Connie is either a step equal with him or just a peg barely below him. That's how good these running backs are. But we're going to see a lot of talent running around that field, possibly 5 touchdowns each. But you need to keep the ball out of his hands. You need to run the ball as many times as possible. What I mean by that, you don't want Connie to go nuts and just 60-yard touchdown, 50-yard touchdown. You want 5-yard game, 6-yard game, 5-yard game, 3-yard game. Because what you're doing is that clock is rolling. And that means more time in Rocco's hands, less time for that dangerous Avon team to have the ball. That's what you have to do. And that's easier said than done because this team can score so easily. And you're not going to fall down.
put up 62 points on Olmsted Falls week 7 of the season.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Have not seen these two teams play at all for my 2 years covering for you guys, but I'm excited. I'm really pumped. I have a full week of awesome football, and that's going to top it off. Actually, I'll be at a Steeler game Sunday too, so I'm going to see 4 games: 1 high school, 2 college, and a professional game. This is a great week for me. And
the Steelers game will probably be the worst.
The worst one. Yeah, I know, right?
A couple things here. Funny thing. One thing I'll say about Ja'Cory and Caffey, no matter what number you put on the kid, what number's on the roster, he gives max effort every time. Max effort. That being said, also Coach DeLuca, if you're watching right now, bring Dom in. Have him talk to the boys pregame. Dom will tell them how all their victories are because of him. Clearly, I
did all the work. What can I say?
Blue collar, baby. That's all I can say about Olmsted Falls.
Hey,
until best cheeseburgers you're gonna find, huh?
Get your lunch pack or your lunch pal. You're a hard hat. Get blocking and get the work.
Listen, Olmsted Falls until this season, one of the last grass fields in this area. Blue collar field. I love Olmsted Falls. Quite frankly, we have talked about moving there if we ever wanted to stay in Cuyahoga County. I love that city. I really do. Coach Elder is probably one of my all-time favorite coaches in any sport at any level. Every time I see him, he's telling me to pick against him. I did it one time. He put it on every freaking locker in that locker room. I'm not joking. This is not a joke. Go back to 2019 regionals. He did. Me and Kai Kawalu had Kawalu on a podcast, and Kawalu said we're gonna put up 2 touchdowns on him easy and win. Coach Elder went berserk with that. So I'm not going to give the bulletin material this week. I am not picking that game. No way, no chance in hell. I just think it's going to be a fun game to watch. We're going to enjoy it. And I will say this before we move on. One of my all-time favorite games I ever called was with Cole. And this was a couple of years ago, very special night. And it was Olmsted Falls versus Avon. And man, oh man, I thought Olmsted Falls had him. Remember Colio? Like Olmsted Falls had him with a minute left, and Avon 2-minute drill drove down and won it. Charlie Seolick had a great game, ended up throwing the interception to end it, unfortunately, for Olmsted Falls. But Cole, you remember that night?
Yeah, I remember it well. Jackson Blodgett with the interception for Avon, the linebacker.
That's right. Tore it up.
Yeah,
the kid I forgot to put on the score sheet. Just unbelievable night. Okay. Speaking of which, though, I talked about it a little bit earlier, and it's funny because people who know me well enough. I was never a big high school football guy. I just wasn't growing up. I enjoyed it. Never did I think I'd have a company one day where it was such a huge focus. But one of the teams that I did watch every single year, because my cousin was in the band for 4 of those years, and then my best friend went to high school for the next 4 years there, St. Ignatius. It was in my blood, right? Then as a reporter, one of the first things I got to do years ago was meet Chuck Kyle, follow him to the state championship. They lost that year in 2016 to St. Xavier out of Cincinnati. I've always had this passion for it. Sitting in the press box on Friday night, ironically enough, how ironic, but at St. Ed's, watching the Eagles dismantle Jackson. 5 straight touchdowns, the first 5 times they touched the ball. Here's a wild stat for you both. We go to the third quarter running clock, 35-0. St. Ed's 35, Jackson 0. Jackson has it for the first 6 minutes, puts up a punt, gets blocked. Eagles take it back for a touchdown, 42-0. Soccer term for you there, Colio. Yep. 42-0. And then, ironically enough, Jackson has it the next 6 minutes. Only time in my life I've been to a high school football game where one team had the ball the entire 12 minutes of a quarter, and they were losing 42-0. Just wild. So, putting my feelings aside of everything about St. Ignatius, the crazy thing for me, though, is the last couple of years, St. Ed's has treated me like family. Want to shout out Adam Mendoza, like Carmen Angelo, Sticks, as we call him, the guy who takes the stats and does Twitter. We call him Sticks. What a family. I love Norm Weber, probably the greatest stats man you're ever going to find. I love St. Ed's now. And I went from growing up with family and friends of hating St. Ed's to loving them. It's the craziest thing. Felt that way about Ball on the Wall since I met Colio there. All right. So I wrote down some notes. Can St. Ignatius upset Eds, and what will it take? I said it's going to take another near miracle. They cannot fall behind again. There's no way They lost the Holy War I was at this year, 44-6, fell behind. They don't have the kind of offense to catch up. Go back and read the story that Amos Hines wrote about their Cleveland Heights win, the 50-49. Two of those touchdowns, guys, came on kickoff returns. So their offense isn't built like that juggernaut of the 90s. It's a much different game now. I also said perhaps another big play on special teams by the Haddad brothers. They've had a hell of a season. But here, to me, is the thing that St. Ignatius needs to do. They need to control the ball with Sean Martin on the ground. Sean Martin is an underclassman running back. The kid's a stud. He's gotten his chance since Stephen Favazzo went down to injury. Sean Martin, that game I was at, had limited touchdowns against Mentor and was the biggest reason they won. He scored 3 touchdowns. The kid was everywhere. When they needed to use him, they did. He was a big, big factor in that. Also, receiver Jonathan Merriman. So Ignatius has some threats. They're not household names like Keon Mason with St. Ed's and Marvin Bell with St. Ed's, and down the line we go with St. Ed's. But there is talent there. And now Chico has a week to coach them up and see what's going to happen. To me, I think St. Ed's is going to win. But at the same time, I think it's the perfect, and you can see I'm excited. I got my notes, I got my pen. It's the perfect way for the Chuck Kyle legacy to end, if it's truly going to end. I can never say thank you enough. I think you could see the book and the way back there that Chuck Kyle wrote the forward for. He has touched my life greatly. I can never say thank you enough. So that is going to be the kind of game that will be must watch for those that are there. Okay, so I have some extra stuff.
And let me just put it this way. You're going to have a fun one at that game. And I know we're talking about bulletin board material. If St. Ignatius wants bulletin board material, fine. You don't have to put Vince's face up there. Put my face up there. I got a route. I got St. Ed's blowing out Ignatius in this one. Honestly, maybe 3 touchdowns would be my guess. So if you want to put a face up on your locker, bulletin board material, there you have it.
Well, it's going to be interesting. We got a little bit of time here before we get to the lightning round. Guys, I want to bounce this off at you. Last weekend was a good example. This weekend's a perfect example. Dom, we're going to actually start with you. Playoffs again. Here we go. Friday night only or Friday, Saturday? As we switch to Friday, Saturday. Now, can I say this? As a guy who made the schedule, it was 4 hours of pure hell Sunday morning trying to make a schedule for 2 nights and getting everybody satisfied. About near jumped off a cliff. But Dom, how do you feel about it? Should playoffs be on multiple nights?
So you broke up a little bit. I'm guessing.
Not should I jump off a cliff?
So he thought about it for a second.
So there's a warm spot in my heart for Saturday playoff games in high school. I remember getting to, we'd have like an early game, we'd get the facility or we'd get to the locker room at 7 on a Saturday, because depending what division you were in PA, that's the day you played on. We fell on Saturdays. The small schools played on Thursdays. Other schools played on Fridays. And it was nice because in PA, you don't have your own games. You don't have a home playoff game. So our school always hosted it. So we'd go to after practice, go to a game, then Friday have practice, go to another game, then Saturdays go to the facility, we'd chill out, watch an early college game, and then go on the bus. I have fond memories of that. I feel like Ohio should have that too. Also, it helps with the referees, it helps with our coverage. So I feel like if you have games on Saturdays, possibly even Thursdays, but I don't think that will even affect us because they'll mainly be smaller schools. I'd say Fridays and Saturdays is a perfect time to spread your games out.
Julio McDaniel.
You know how I feel about this one. It is as simple as Saturday football games should only happen when it comes to state championships. Aside from that, nothing else. Friday nights strictly until we hit the state championships, and then we have the Thursday, Friday, Saturday schedule. You know how I feel about college football? Saturday is for college football strictly. No other level of football, and you better not get a high school football game in the way of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I think Saturday night football for high school during the regular season is stupid. Don't like it. Have never liked it. Never will like it. If you want to do the Holy War on a Saturday night, that's different. That's a 1-week exception. I'm happy to make that exception. There's been times where I've done what I call the Buyers Quad, and it's a game at Byers on Thursday, a game at Byers on Friday, and then 2 games at Byers on Saturday. So there's cool little gimmicks that go along with it in the regular season that you could try out, and it's a lot of fun. I like to do. One time I did a three-peat where I did a game on. No, I'm sorry, it was actually another quadruple, but different stadiums, 4 different stadiums. That was a blast. Other than that, though, during the regular season, I would be totally cool if it was all Friday nights. Playoffs are a different story, with the exception of the minor headache that I had, Sunday morning, which I'm not gonna lie, it was a flipping nightmare trying to get internship kids who have internship hours. My best of the best, I'll say it. You want the best people you have with the best games. It's a spider web of responsibilities for anybody who runs a media organization, whether it's the Plain Dealer, whether it's Key on Sports, whether it's the Morning Journal. You have a million different responsibilities. Okay, that all being said, I love the fact that it's on Saturday nights during the playoffs. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It gives me a reason. There's 2 games. For me, there's 6 games that I could rattle off right now that I would have loved to cover. Love to cover. Highland, Medina versus Menor. I'll give you Eds versus Ziggy. Obviously, Hoban versus St. Vincent St. Mary's. Falls versus Avon. Holy Name versus Mansfield. Crestview versus Columbia. Glenville versus Elyria Catholic. Norton versus Padua. Those are just a handful of games that I personally would have loved to be at, and I can't. But
that was like 2 handfuls. That was like 8 or 9 games you just listed.
Addicted. So that
was like the whole schedule.
Right? So if you could bounce a couple games on Saturday, I'm gonna take it. All right, we are short on time, and I do not want to miss out on the lightning round. So Cole McDaniel, you will go first. Your question this week, and granted, we love Avon and Olmsted Falls, but 2, if not the 2 worst parking lots to try to pull out after a game. Which one do you hate even more, parking lot wise?
Yeah,
no reflection on the city.
I love covering football games for both. Didn't get to cover Avon this year. Got to cover Olmsted Falls a few times. Those football teams are so much fun. Dom's going to have a blast at that game covering that one. Like I said that I think Avon makes it to the state championship. But if Olmsted Falls pulls off the upset, I think the winner of that game makes it to the state championship against Winton Woods. Whoever wins that game, doesn't matter which one wins it. But, I'm leaning Avon there. But when it comes to the parking lot situation, it's tough for both. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, up to Avon's a farther drive for me at this point. Olmsted Falls is closer, so it's easier to get there. I could get there a little bit earlier. Yeah, the closer you get to walk in, the longer it's going to take to get out. But let me just put it this way. Avon's parking situation is worse. It is impossible to get out of there. I feel like I could be all the way at the back of the line and get out of Olmsted Falls in about 20 minutes. The last time I was up to Avon, it felt like it was about 30 minutes. Dom was, of course, with me for that game covering it. Dom's phone was dead. Need to follow me, so I made sure that he stayed close behind me so he could follow me, so I could at least get him back to the Berea area. So
I didn't know where I was going,
but it was almost impossible to get out of that Avon parking lot that night. And it's not even a parking lot. I mean, we're out on the grass field out there.
No, it's a middle school too, and here's the thing: that's the middle school area. It's a nightmare. As a father of 2 little kids, I always worry about safety. Right. Little kids dart across like crazy in that parking lot. I've never seen anything like it. And teenage girls, if you guys want to hear a super quick funny story, Friday night, I'm coming out of the press box at Lakewood, which is actually one of the nicer press boxes because it's at sea level and you don't have to walk up a million steps, but no one knows where the door is. So I open up the door, I go to take a step, and these teenage girls cut me off. I fall right in front of them, like face plant. I'm on the ground. Yeah. Oh yeah. Rolled my ankle. I mean, it hurt bad. I'm almost in tears. It was so painful. Like, then it just walk off. Like, seriously, that's like my elbow. We're almost talking about that kid from that one basketball school where the bone was out of the skin. I'm like, I'm grabbing
Kevin Ware.
Yeah, Kevin Ware on Easter Sunday of all days. Yeah, that was horrible. I'm way off subject. Okay, so Tom, here we go. Who is your favorite Rocky? Rocky Balboa, Rocco Connie, or that obnoxious little squirrel that hangs around Bullwinkle?
That's hard. When I was little, I used to listen to the Rocky soundtrack and then try to shadow box my dog. So I'd have to go. I'd have to go. This is when the Rocky Balboa movie came out. Well, I was probably like 8. No
like
offense
30.
to no offense to Rocco Conti, but I'll have to take Rocky Balboa.
Ooh, that's my 2 favorite Rockies. All right, next question here. You've been abducted by aliens, and they're asking you to show them a good time in Hermitage County, Hickory, PA, your hometown. Were you going to take them for a good time?
Mercer County. All right, first, I
show them 798 people. Go ahead.
Is that true?
Yes, I looked it up.
First, I'll take them down to Sharpsville, a quick little road down Hermitage. Take a nice little loo. You end up in Sharpsville. Take them to breakfast at Tiffany's, where they have pancakes the size of your living room. First of all, that's where I would take them, right? And then for lunch, boy, I'll take them to Lock, Stock, and Barrel. I'll show them a great sub. And then that's also in Sharpsville. Then I'll take them to West Middlesex, where Faith is from, and I'll take them to the diner, give them a nice gyro. Oh, that's where I'd have to go if I'm showing aliens around.
Where's the Italian food?
Shout out for Faith.
I can take them to Muscarellas in Sharpsville as well. Yeah, them Muscarellas. And hey, they give you enough Italian food where you got leftovers for the next 5 days. Yeah.
Cole, back to you to finish this off. Little under 2 minutes to go. How excited are you for these, the final few weeks of this? I put in today for our, it's going to be me, you, and Bogan for state tournament finals coming up. How you feeling, bud? I mean, this is now, I think, your 4th or 5th year, 3rd year with Keon Sports, but you've been around the atmosphere a few years now. How does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I think the main thing is it's not the same every single year. I mean, you get the same feel of, hey, it's the same type of games. You get good, powerful matchups up against each other, but there's still different things that happen every single year with these games. I mean, some of the comebacks you see, some of the plays you see, at least it's fresh every single season, which makes it fun. And then, of course, there's a good chance we end up seeing some different teams in some state championship games as it comes down to you, me, and Bogan covering that. Everybody make sure when we get to that point, make sure to be subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already.
Our games this week before we go home: Highland versus TCC, Medina versus Meta, Riverside versus Hudson, Kirtland versus Dalton, Ads versus Ziggy, Hoban versus St. Vincent St. Mary, Falls versus Avon, Cuyahoga Heights versus Mogador, Olentangy versus Liberty, Chardon versus Kenston, Holy Name versus Mansfield, Crestview versus Columbia, Glenville versus Elaria Catholic, Norwood versus Padua, West Branch versus Brookdale, Canton South versus Jefferson, and Perry versus Garraway. We'll send you home with that. Cole, talk to you soon.